Abundanza and welcome. Thank you for joining the Frozen to Fabulous program. Here we will be taking a sneak peek at ways to save time, making delicious meals by freezing simple ingredients. It's all about abundanza, plenty of food, family, and fun. Hi, I'm Barbara Barron, your family meals dietitian, and I work with busy people, busy parents and their organizations who want more time, more energy, and more confidence preparing those healthier meals, all while having less stress in the kitchen and less stress at the dinner table. If any of those things apply to you, then you are in the right place. Before we get started, I really want to share with you some of the materials and the handouts that you received by just joining the program. First, there's the Frozen to Fabulous playbook. This is a PDF writable, picture-filled book that you can fill in the blanks as you follow along with the program. So you may not want to print it, but definitely fill it in as we go along. Then there's the ebook with really Frozen to Fabulous with great recipes and really cool tips on freezing foods. The recipes kind of are using some of the frozen foods that we've talked about and how you can make delicious meals with something that was frozen, or it's like a new twist on an old recipe or a new ingredient in a traditional recipe. So take a look at that and have some fun playing with some new meals. Then there's the two bonuses that I've included, which is the menu planner worksheet. The menu planner worksheet is just kind of way to keep everything organized. When you're planning your meals, you write down the meals that you want to make, the foods that are included, keep your shopping list all in one place. Helps you stay organized. Then there's the rainbow evaluation. This is one of my favorite ways to show the importance of eating a variety of foods. It has all the different foods categorized by colors, the nutrients that they're providing, and the health benefits. So that's a nice reference tool. Before we dive in, I do want to introduce to you Dorothy Erlinger. Dorothy will be joining us as our meeting producer. She will be facilitating all the questions in the chat, and this way I can share more of the fun facts with you. Okay, let's dive right in. But before we really get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, let's have a little fun with a brain teaser. All right, here it is. This is a brain teaser that you can share at the dinner table with your friends, your family, your kids, your nieces, your nephews, anyone. All right, it's clean. Okay, why do green beans meditate? Thinking? Why do green beans meditate? To find inner peace. P-E-A-S, peace. You're going to get some eye rollers at the table, probably, especially from your teenagers, but it is a fun way to start out a meal and just have some fun. So with that, let's dive right into the program.
All right. So you all know me. My number one passion is all around family and friends and bringing people together around food. And it's really about eating healthy food together. So you could read about me. For those who are catching the recording, you could read about me in barbarabaronnutrition at my website. But the key thing is that I have been a working mom, full-time working mom for about 30 years. And my roots really go back into the family. And even though I was traveling quite frequently in my job, I always made time to sit down together with our family whenever we could. And I had good role models. And my role models were my grandmother and my mother. And my mother, and since we're talking about frozen foods, my mother was kind of like the first person that introduced me to frozen foods, but it wasn't the frozen TV dinners that you may all know or be familiar with. It was really freezing homemade foods that she prepared. And one thing in particular was eggplant. She would take the eggplant, prepare the patties, freeze them, and then if some company was coming over, they were going to call and say, oh, we're coming over. Out came these patties from the freezer. She'd assemble them in the pan, put some sauce, put some cheese, put them in the oven, and in minutes we had a meal on the table for friends or cousins, whoever was coming over for dinner. So she was the first person in my world that went from frozen to fabulous. So what I want to do is take a sneak peek into your freezers, and let's take a virtual walk into your freezer. Now, if you're near your freezer, you can go take a peek inside, so you can get up and move around. I'm going to do this little poll, and I want to know, let's see here. I would like you to jot down the top 2 foods that are in your freezer right now. So is it fruits and vegetables? Is it starchy vegetables? And they say meat, fish, and poultry. What would be the top 2 foods that I would find in your freezer? So we did a sneak peek into everyone's freezer, and the top, it seems like the number 1 is meat, fish, and poultry is in everyone's freezer, as well as fruits. I would have thought vegetables, but that's great. So now let's take a deeper dive on what we're going to cover. And we're just going to go over these, like this is the window pane of someone's kitchen. It's not my kitchen, but let's take a look and see, do you think frozen foods are healthier than fresh? That's one of the things we're going to cover. We're going to look at what to stock your freezer with, how freezing saves time, and how meal times can be made easier for you. So let's take a look. How many of you think that frozen foods are as healthy as fresh? Give me a thumbs up. If you through the camera, thumbs up if frozen is as healthy as fresh. Okay, you are right. So now we're going to go into a little rationale on why fresh vegetables are picked at the farm right before peak ripeness. And why is that? Because they then take those vegetables and put them in the trucks, and they will ripen in the trucks or in the train cars in transit to the supermarket. But when you look at something that's frozen, it's picked right at its peak ripeness, and then it's flash frozen, so it locks in all those nutrients right on the farm. And Dorothy, I was talking with Dorothy a little earlier today, and she was telling me about a story that she grew up near a farm, near the Jolly Green Giant farm. So do you want to share that story with us?
Yeah, I was actually working in Minnesota, and they grow huge numbers of vegetables for the Green Giant company. As a matter of fact, go down to Mankato, Minnesota, there's a great big sign, "Welcome to the Valley of the Jolly Green Giant." And in the summertime, when the sweet corn was ripening, they hired everybody that they could get their hands on. Housewives, students, they ran buses into the towns, they ran their plants 24/7, because their commitment was that from the time that sweet corn was pulled off the plant until the time it was fully processed was no more than like 5 hours. It was totally amazing.
That can be sometimes why, that will be why frozen will be even better than fresh many, many times. And when you look at the texture of a fresh versus frozen, the texture will wilt after a few days when it's in the supermarket, unless you get there right at the time when they unload. Frozen, the texture will soften when it's thawed. So some frozen foods and fruits you'll want to use in certain dishes, such as soups or stir fries, rather than eating them like as a dip. So the nutrients are the same if it's flash frozen or if it's fresh picked from the farm. And the advantage of having something that's frozen, it's available all year round. When you look at something that's picked fresh, you only get it when it's in season. And even when it's transported from other countries, it's not necessarily fresh. It has to ripen on its way to the supermarket. And again, when you have something that's frozen, you can have it all year round. I know my husband, who had a farm, not a farm, I call it a farm. He actually had a large garden, and they would freeze corn, berries, green beans, and make a whole day out of freezing these things. You'd blanch them, and then they would have that stored up for the winter for the entire year. So they had fresh produce, fresh fruits all year long. So let me ask you to think a moment, and I want to know for you to write in the chat, what is your go-to food in the freezer and why? So just type in the chat the food, and then in 3 words or less, why that's your go-to food. Shrimp, easy to defrost to make a meal. Great. Pizza.
That was me.
Yep, it sounds good. And chicken cutlets. Buy them on sale and defrost same day as eating them. Yep. So I'm hearing a lot of berries. Eat them every other day with yogurt for breakfast. Great. I'm seeing a lot of ease, and a lot of the reasons why you're doing this is just for the simplicity, and it's a really good go-to meal. So the benefits to freezing: fast food preparation, reduces stress. What is one situation that you could name that would be more stressful from freezing or thawing out a particular food? If you had a 24-pound turkey and you forget to thaw it out in the refrigerator, and you're doing it the day before, that would cause a stressful situation. But other than that, freezing foods can reduce the stress in your kitchen. Easy access to out-of-season produce. We already mentioned that. It also saves money because you're using only what you need, and you're not wasting any food after that. So you're just taking out from the freezer what you need. Also, when you look at frozen foods, a lot of the enzymes in many of your naturally occurring fruits and vegetables have these enzymes which kind of ripens the food faster and can deteriorate the food, but freezing halts that process. So again, you're preserving that food. And also, in turn, you're extending not only the shelf life, but the nutritional value as well. So let's game time here. Let's play a game. And the game is freeze it or leave it. So I'm going to show you a picture of a food, and I want you to decide if you can freeze it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the food first, but if you freeze it, you can type in the letter F. If you think you leave it, you type in the letter L. And just go find the chat box, and when I say go, we're going to play right after I show you the food. Okay, avocados. What about avocados? So avocados they're actually a fruit, and you may know that already. It's a stone fruit and has a pit, and it has a creamy texture. It's really delicious. What's the number one thing you can think of making with avocados?
Guacamole.
Guacamole, yes. But now all the rage is about avocado toast. You can put avocado in your salads. You can even put avocado in your soup, and just chunk it up and make little chunks and put that in your soup. You can put it in smoothies too. So many things you can do with avocado. The nutritional value is endless. The monounsaturated fats is heart healthy, and the lutein in avocados are actually great for your eye health. And what's been shown is that avocados can help lower your risk of age-related macular degeneration on top of that. So given all of those good nutrition and luscious suggestions, what do you think? Could you freeze it or would you leave it?
So far, I see 1 freeze and 4 leave. Any other votes?
So 4 leaves, okay. Freeze it. You can freeze avocado. Do you believe it? And I'm going to tell you very simply how you can do that. You just mash it up, put some lime juice over it. Of course, you're going to peel it. Remove the outer skin and the pit, and then you just put it in a freezer bag. Score it. So when you score it, you're creating little sections that when you defrost it, you can defrost a section at a time. So if you just want to pop it into a smoothie, if you want to make a small serving of guacamole with it, you can do that. You can make avocado toast with it. But the advantage of making these small portions is that it's also easier to defrost. So there's an advantage there. Just pop it in the freezer. Use it right away though, because even though there's lime juice that you've mixed into it to help prevent it from getting gray and oxidating, which all those lovely nutrients. So you just use it right away as soon as you defrost it, and it will be delicious. But first, before we go to the next food, I'm just going to talk briefly about freezer-friendly fruits. And you can freeze just about any fruits. The only thing is with bananas, you want to peel them. And strawberries, blackberries. I saw Loretta had said that she mixes her blueberries with yogurt. You can make frozen blueberries and make a parfait with that yogurt, with the yogurt and the frozen blueberries, or any of those fruits. What are some other things you could make with frozen fruits? Well, you can make smoothies. So smoothies, and why not just eat them like that? It's really a cool treat, sweet, and it's really low in calories, but packed with lots of nutrition. So frozen bananas, frozen strawberries, frozen blueberries, all of those really make really delicious treats when you want something sweet as a snack. Okay.
And I see cobblers in the chat as well. That sounds really good.
Cobblers, yeah, that's great. You know, cobblers are a great way to use frozen fruits because when you freeze the fruit, it really will get a little bit mushy. It's not as intact as it would be when it's fresh. So when it thaws out, it starts to get mushy. So that's why you wouldn't put a frozen fruit that's thawed into a salad, because it'll mush into the salad too. Great ideas. Grapes are another one. Lovely, another great snack. All right, let's go to the next food. Radicchio. Does everyone know what radicchio is? Okay, so radicchio is kind of like in the chicory family. It's a little slightly bitter tasting vegetable, almost like a salad. You chop it up and use it in salads. And it has this purple pigment called anthocyanins. And that purple pigment it's an antioxidant. It helps with healthy blood vessels. It keeps the blood vessels healthy and prevents inflammation in those blood vessels. So it also has the anthocyanins, gives it a purple color, and it also has a nutritional benefit or a health benefit. Radicchio happens to be high in vitamin K, very rich source, and vitamin K also is associated with increasing the calcium in your bones. It helps the absorption of calcium and in turn will help with bone health. So radicchio has great nutritional value and health benefits. So would you freeze it or leave it? Are we already responding? Put an F or an L. Karen says freeze it. Who else? Anyone else? You're thinking, okay. Leave it. Anne Marie says leave it. Corey, freeze it. Regina says leave it. And Liz says freeze it. Okay, great. I'm going to tell you, you're going to leave it. Okay. Leave it. And the reason why you want to leave it is because it's really, it has a high water content, but also it will get a little bit mushy. And if you want to use it in a salad, it's going to be wilty by the time it thaws. So it's better if you were to leave it rather than freeze it. Let's move on to sweet potatoes, which is another vegetable high in beta carotene, which is great for your vision. You know, just like beta carotene in your carrots, sweet potatoes has the same nutrient. Beta carotene also helps support your immune system, and the fiber in sweet potatoes also helps with your digestion. So tell me, would you freeze it or leave it? Sweet potatoes. Given you can mash sweet potatoes, you can roast sweet potatoes, and you can bake them. Roasting them, you could put them in a salad, or eat them cold, or eat them hot if they're roasted.
Well, most are saying freeze. I
Freeze it.
think one person has said leave.
Okay.
Freeze
Rinse and reheat
cooked.
it.
That's an interesting point.
Okay, so yes, freeze it. So basically all you're going to do is prepare it as you would normally. Like I mashed these potatoes, and then I put them in muffin tins. I lined the muffin tin with plastic wrap, and then I covered it with plastic wrap. And now I froze that. Now I keep it in the freezer for a couple of hours. Then you take it out. You take those individual servings of potatoes, put them in a freezer bag, store them in your freezer. Now you have individual servings that you could defrost, and you can defrost as many as you want or as little as you want. You can pop that into a smoothie. You can pop that into, just make a serving or a couple of servings of mashed potatoes and just reheat it. You can reheat it in the microwave. And there you have it. They just have a really quick and easy. The advantage of putting it in the smaller tins is that it will defrost faster, so that you can get to your meal in minutes rather than having it sit in the fridge for a longer period of time. All right. Any questions so far? So here's some more vegetables, and just peppers, you want to chop and slice them. Butternut squash, obviously, you're going to want to remove the outer skin from before you chop or mash them. Edamame, you can also freeze. I tend not to freeze edamame. I buy them frozen. But if you do freeze them, make sure you remove from the shells. And it's better to blanch many of the vegetables, like cauliflower, edamame, and peppers not so much. But if you want to blanch them, and blanching means just putting them in hot water for a short period of time so they get a bright green color, and then put them in cold water right away. This way it stops some of those enzymes from deteriorating the vegetable, or it will preserve it a lot faster. It's kind of like that flash frozen that the plants do when it's fresh picked. This particular slide has a copy of the edamame ginger dip recipe that's also in your ebook. And if you haven't picked up the ebook on the website or in that healthy site, please do go get that. That's free for you. There are many recipes along with some of these same tips, and I'm just going a little bit more in depth in this webinar. So now we're moving on to grains. Would you freeze or leave it? Brown rice. Brown rice actually has 3 times the amount of fiber as white rice. And when you look at the fiber helps control your blood sugar levels better. It also helps lower cholesterol. And there is an antioxidant, it has lots of antioxidants, but one in particular is quercetin. And quercetin helps reduce your risk of cancer. It helps slow the growth of cancer cells. So there's an advantage of eating brown rice. And would you freeze it or would you leave it? And I see a lot of F's in there. Okay. Yes, you would freeze it. Some of you may have seen the videos that I put out on my Facebook page. You would freeze it, and the real easy, just take a small serving size, like I put a cup and put it in mounds on a flat baking sheet. You could do the same thing like you did with I did with the sweet potatoes, put it in muffin tins, put that in the freezer, let it freeze for a couple of hours, let it get hard, then transfer that to the freezer bag. And then you just pop that back in the freezer. You take it out when you need it. It's really simple. So what about other grains other than brown rice? There's wild rice, quinoa, and bread. Bread, you may not think to freeze. And the reason why I like to freeze my bread is because I like a variety of bread to have on hand. And I don't eat that much bread, but when I do, I want it. And I like multi-grain bread, I like sprouted bread, and sometimes I do like my English muffins, and I like to make little pizzas on my English muffins. So I keep a variety of breads in my freezer, and it's a great way to preserve and lock in the nutrients. I only take out as much as I need, the rest stays in the freezer. One thing with bread, though, you don't want to put it in the refrigerator, because when you put it in the refrigerator, it starts to go stale. The moisture, it dries out the bread, but the moisture locks in when you freeze it. Let's move on to protein foods. when you're freezing protein foods, this is a really busy slide. So I'm not going to go into every little item here. Two things I want to point out, and I'm going to share this slide with you in another venue, and I'll mention that later. I'm inviting you to join my free Facebook group on Facebook. It's the Better Meals with Barbara, and I'll give you the URL after this. But I'll put this slide up there so that you can see it in more depth. One thing you want to make sure when it comes to protein and foods, eggs, you don't want to freeze your eggs in the shell. You better to beat the egg yolks and whites together. Egg yolks do not freeze very well because of the high fat content. And just as some little tips there about freezing foods that are high in protein. This slide also has a recipe that's in your book, which is unstuffed bell peppers. And all of these recipes are taking something that's been in the freezer and preparing a meal with them so that you can do something really fast. So let's move on to some best practices, do's and don'ts. Do buy things that are on fruits and vegetables that are not heavily seasoned. And the reason is you don't want the higher amount of sodium, fat, and extra sugar that's in the seasoned variety. It's better to season in your home with dried herbs or fresh herbs. It doesn't matter. What you do want to do is use frozen vegetables and fruits for soups, stir fries, and smoothies. If you notice, when you're using them from soups, sometimes the vegetables get a little bit softer. So use those in stir fries and smoothies. And not on salads. I mentioned that earlier, like for blueberries, if you buy frozen blueberries, you don't want to put them on a salad because then when they thaw out, it'll get mushy and it'll bleed into the salad, and it doesn't make it very pretty. But you could probably make a puree out of it. One thing, number one, food safety, is to make sure that you thaw your meat, fish, and poultry in the fridge and not on the counter. And that's just hopefully you know that. And that's a good food safety practice. So I want to know, what food will you freeze next? I would like you to write it in the chat, if you will. Think about, is it a fruit, vegetables, something that you haven't done yet, but you're willing to try, maybe something from what we just saw from the short time together? And Karen is asking, is it safe to defrost in water? Yes, it is. Cold water. So when you take your frozen, may say chicken or beef, put it in a plastic bag, a baggie that's freezer safe, seal it up real tight, and dip it in cold water. And every 30 minutes, you should change the water and defrost it that way. Or if you defrost it in the refrigerator. So I actually just did this the other day. I had some steak that I had. It was frozen solid. Pulled out the steak, and it's better than doing it in the microwave because the microwave tends to make the edges a little bit or gray, or it kind of starts to cook it. So I put it in a freezer bag and I put it in a cold bath of water, and it was good to go. And it took a little bit of a while, but it was a good way to defrost faster. All right, so. Got
some great suggestions there.
So let's see.
We've got berries, rice, fruits and vegetables, grains, and Regina says a cooked meal, making a portion size as you talked about.
Okay.
That's an interesting idea.
And Corey, what kind of rice do you go to freeze?
Yeah, I just put it in the refrigerator if we have leftovers. But I never thought of freezing rice.
If you freeze rice, obviously, if you're going to eat it quickly, yes, it could stay in the fridge, and then you're going to be eating it fast. But if you're not, and you could have something really quick and easy, freeze some, but make extra, and then put it in the freezer.
Right,
so
that's what I was thinking. Right, because
Mm-hmm.
then it would be quicker. Sometimes you forget to cook it right away. Cook it, and then you have to wait. Everything else is finished, and you're waiting for the rice to cook.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Regina, you're going to make small portions, making a portion as you talked about. The key with anything, and I think I skipped over that slide, But one of my go-to foods that I know my sister is on here, but one of the go-to foods that I freeze is a big pot of sauce and meatballs. So I make a huge pot, and I will make containers, and I freeze the meat separate from the sauce, just like my mom did. And she taught me that, and that allows it to defrost easily, more quickly, and you will have a meal. I can have a meal for months. Just go into that freezer, and I can make my pasta with spaghetti and meatballs, or macaroni and meatballs, you name it. Can make Parmesan with that. So it's really the great extender for any meal for me. And just like Corey, your go-to is your rice, right? And so things like that. So I am going to challenge you to I'm holding you to this, to take what you wrote in the chat. I have a recording of this. I will have the transcripts. And I hope that you join my Facebook group, Better Meals with Barbara. And I am asking you to join the challenge. Just ask to join the Facebook group, and we're going to do a 5-day Frozen to Fabulous challenge. Now, I'm going to make it easy. It doesn't have to be any particular food, just something that you want to try to freeze. And you can look through the ebook and pick something. And even if you make one of the recipes that's in that ebook, that's even better, because then you can share whether it was a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or so something like that. Just I'll put together some rules. I'm going to put that in the Facebook group, and do it for 5 days, one a day. Okay. And the person who really comes through with one a day, and the person who invites friends to the Facebook group will get a prize. I'm looking at a couple of fun prizes, like some food puns, of course. So I will put that in the Facebook group as well. Are there any questions before we wrap it up?
Yes, there's a question in the chat that actually is very interesting. Anne Marie's asking, is it true that if you defrost something, you have to use it and cannot refreeze it if you don't use it all?
Yes, that is I will check the actual science on that one, but yes, you want to use it rather than refreeze it. It's going from raw meat that you've frozen, and then you don't want to bring it back into the freezer, because then you've had microorganisms and bacteria growing, and then you're freezing it again. So that's not a good practice, because you just want to defrost it and take it straight to the oven or to the stove. So that if it's raw, you don't want to refreeze it. Does that answer your question? If it's cooked, if you're defrosting a meat, you cook it and then you're freezing it, you're fine. Does that make sense for you?
Marie, you can unmute yourself for a sec.
Yes, you could speak. We'll allow you.
Yes. That's what I always understood anyway, because that was like the rule in my house. But I was wondering if it was true or not. So
yes,
you confirmed it.
Corey, do you want to chime in?
I agree with what you said.
Okay. Okay. Corey's another registered dietitian on the call. But yes, it's you don't want to refreeze a raw meat or raw fish or anything like that.
Something like if you, like a piece of bread, say, and you defrosted that, and then you refroze it, you wouldn't have a food safety issue, but it would be a quality issue.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have the same quality. The bread wouldn't taste as good, the next time you defrosted it.
Terrific. And how often can you refreeze a cooked meat? Once. I'm hoping I'm hitting the answer to your question.
Yeah, so let's say you have your pot of meatballs and you put it in the freezer and you cook it, but all the meatballs aren't eaten. Can you refreeze those meatballs or just refrigerate them and eat them the next day?
Refrigerate.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So any other questions, I'm happy to answer, and I'll answer them in the Facebook group, or you can actually email me with questions. And I just thank you for being here, and I hope you participate in the 5-day challenge.